Yeah, no, there are a lot of school systems that are starting to train different students on mindfulness techniques, emotional intelligence techniques, spending more time doing that,
Mm-hmm.
which I applaud. I think it's really helpful. And the younger people can learn and practice, and it becomes part of their DNA and their fiber, the better off the world will be. And I will say, I do think this generation coming up is one of the most inclusive generations ever. And I give them a lot of credit for that. Um, I think they see, I think they have less bias and less prejudice. They have more care and concern for the planet. Um, and they're much more inclusive overall,
Mm-hmm.
has been what I've noticed. And I think it's good for the world. It can't happen soon enough.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your co-host, Andy McDowell, founder and owner of Generate Your Value, providing self-leadership, leadership, and business coaching services for corporate executives and business owners.
And I'm Zach Levy, your other co-host. I run a nationwide financial service business with my wife, Megan.
Together, Zach and I have the intention to bring you tips, concepts, ideas, suggestions, stories, and analogies from A to Z, which will help you to grow your personal brand and leadership skills in such a way that joy, happiness, and success, as you define it for yourself, are achieved.
We hope to use our gifts, talents, and experiences in business and leadership to generate value in your life. And with that being said, let's move to our topic for today.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. My name is Andy McDowell, one of your co-hosts. My partner in crime, Zach Levy, won't be able to join us today, but we're still going to have a great conversation with a great guest I have for you today, Mr. Greg Zlevor, based out of Stowe, Vermont. He's up there in leaf country right now in the fall. He just told me in the green room, they're all gone. So hopefully,
Getting there.
yeah, if you all are heading up that way, you might want to turn around. No, just kidding.
Or you better
It's
hurry,
still a
'cause
great
there's
place.
a few trees left.
Yeah, it's still
Yeah.
a great place. So let me read you his bio, and we'll get to know him a little bit in the coming minutes. So Greg Zlevor is the president and founder of Westwood International. He has over 25 years of experience in executive leadership development and education. Has served as a coach, consultant, facilitator for companies across Europe, Asia, North America, South America, and Australia. He's an Amazon. Is it 7 or 8 now?
It's actually this week it became 9.
9. 9-time best-selling
9.
author and a TED speaker. Under Greg's leadership, Westwood International has made its mission to give back, supporting not-for-profit organizations that help homeless children and at-risk youth across the U.S., Mexico, Thailand, India, and South America. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in biology from Lawrence University up in upper Wisconsin and a master's degree
Go Vikings.
in spirituality from Boston College. Who,
Go,
by the
go
way,
Eagles.
my alma mater is playing Boston College this Saturday at the time of this
Oh, really?
recording.
Who's your alma mater?
Georgia Tech.
Oh, yeah. Both, I think, 3-3 right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Battle of the mediocres.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Got a new
Mm.
coach who's changing things, and we have a lot of hope. But
That's good.
we're hoping to make a bowl
Wonderful.
game this year. Everybody would be ecstatic if we make it to a bowl game finally after 4 or 5 years of
more
missing
win.
one. Yeah. So, Greg, I know a bit about your background. Maybe if you could, for the listening audience, how did a guy growing up in upper Wisconsin grow into be a professional in leadership development and executive coaching?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Andy, because in some respects, life just kept pulling the thread, or I kept pulling the thread and kept following it, and it led to it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like a specific plan that I followed. to get me here. Essentially, I got my degree in biology because I wanted to be a doctor. Found out from the books I was reading on the side and on the weekends while I was in college that I was much more interested in the mind and the spirit than I was the body. And so even though I wanted to be working with people and as part of a healing process or a growing process, I realized the body wasn't it. It was more the mind and the spirit. So I continued my degree in biology, finished with a biology degree, but didn't want to go to medical school like I'd planned.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of like, "Ooh, what am I going to do?" Well, the local high school needed a science teacher. So, not realizing how difficult that job was, I said yes. And I spent 4 years teaching at Zlevor High School in Appleton, Wisconsin, which was a great baptism for me. Like, just have a full appreciation for teachers and education after that 4 year experience. Met a lot of great people, wonderful students, etc. But it still left me with the challenge of what am I going to do? And I wanted to go to graduate school, didn't know what I wanted to study.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, what's the most important thing to me? And still is my spirituality. So I started looking for programs and kind of some funny stories in there, but ended up at Boston College in the Institute of Religious Education and Pastoral Ministry, and they had a master's in spirituality. And so I got my master's in spirituality, which was wonderful. And then when I finished that degree, the university asked me if I would stay on and become a chaplain. And I said yes. So 7 years I spent on staff at Boston College creating leadership programs, mission trips, retreats, different experiences for students, faculty, and staff. And to this day, I think still the best job I ever had. It was a blast because essentially the university let me create whatever I wanted to create as long as I was making a difference on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end had developed multiple programs, one program, 48 hours. Still to this day, I designed it in the 90s. Still to this day, it's running on campus. And over half the freshman class attend 48 hours still to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, my daughter, Emily, when she went to Boston College to play lacrosse, went down the retreat. So it was kind of ironic to see that circle come all the way around. But while I was teaching at Zlevor High School and working at Boston College, I met a guy named M. Scott Peck, who wrote The Road Less Traveled, Different Drum, etc. And I met him, I kind of stumbled into him as well. But the long and short of it is, they invited me to do a training program to be a facilitator for this workshop that he created called a Community Building Workshop. And it was based on his book, The Different Drum. And I went to the workshop. Turned out I was the youngest person there, in my early 20s, got accepted as a facilitator, and worked with him for 10 years while I was in graduate school as a chaplain and then a couple years afterwards. Those 10 years were very formative for me because it taught me the dynamics of community and building groups and networks and healthy relationships from a collective perspective. It also gave me the push out of the university because I would do workshops on the weekends with Dr. Peck or other facilitators. I eventually started my own little consulting company, kind of a side hustle, while I was at Boston College. And then I went and did a conference with M. Scott Peck. He was the keynote. I'd set the keynote up and some other pieces. And from the stage, he said, "Don't come up to the stage. Don't talk to me. I don't want to talk to any of you." And there were about 1,000 people in the audience. He said, "If you want this work, we have one of the best facilitators in our foundation in the room, Greg Zlevor." My nickname was Z at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Go talk to Z. He'll help you." Now, at the time, I was still a chaplain. I was doing I'm still in the side hustle part of my consultancy. But I had 3 companies within that week call and ask to put me on retainer to help them. And so I eventually had to leave the university, do this work full time, and I've been consulting ever since. So that's how the thread got started and kept pulling and pulled me in.
So I'm curious, what was your spiritual life like as a kid? Were you active in church? Was church a mainstay in your life, or what was it about spirituality that attracted you?
Yeah. I'm not completely sure. Like, I don't have like an origin moment or a wake up
An
moment
aha
or
moment.
an aha moment. I don't have that. I have several aha moments that have happened through my life, but not a moment where I say, "Oh, I was not spiritual and all of a sudden I am spiritual." I did have a near death experience when I was young, which may have been part of it. There was the first neighborhood that I can remember playing with other kids. I do have memories from an earlier neighborhood. My parents were first married and I was first born, but I don't remember playing with kids in that neighborhood. The neighborhood I do remember was the one when I started nursery school, kindergarten, first, second grade. I remember that neighborhood in Waukesha. Turns out I went to a Catholic grade school, and then when I came home to my street, all the kids went to the public school, and they were all 2 to 5 years older than I was. So I started hanging out with kids who were older, and I never backed down. I don't know. I just somehow always wanted to get into the group, be a part of the group, and I didn't back down from a dare or a challenge or what have you, even though I was several years younger. So one day we're down at the river, and the river had one of those big dams with the metal sheet that controls the flow of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And the group dared me to walk across that metal beam above that
The swing.
swing,
Yeah.
that big metal plate. Well, so I took the challenge. I started walking, and I fell. And fortunately, I fell into the water side, not the rapid side.
Mm-hmm.
So I fell into the water, and I remember being underwater and seeing green and yellow and the sunlight coming through, but never having any panic. I don't remember one moment of panic from that experience. I just remember being a complete peace under the water. And then the next thing I remember is a gentleman asking me if he'd give me a ride home in his car. Those are the 2 memories I have.
So did you black out in that
I
period of
assume I
time?
did. I
Yeah.
assume I was unconscious, blacked out. I don't know if I died, and the guy brought me back with mouth to mouth. I don't know what happened. I have no idea. But the guy walked me home. He said, "Okay,
Mm.
can I walk you home?" And I said, "Yeah, you can walk me home." Now, my friends had all taken off by this point.
Right.
They were gone. So he walked me home, dropped me off at my house. I don't even think my parents asked who he was or what happened. And they're just like, "Okay, thanks." And it wasn't until later that day that they found out what happened. I have talked to other people who have had near death experiences who have said they've had a peace and a calmness about them since that experience happened to them,
Mm-hmm.
or there was some kind of aha moment that happened to them in that experience.
I've heard the same thing.
That may, pardon, you heard the
I've
same
heard the
thing?
same thing.
Yeah. I was too young to put anything into words at that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was in like nursery school, maybe kindergarten. So I didn't have the language or the experience to put. But I will say, most people will say I'm a pretty calm person and I handle things in stride. There are moments in life I've been shaken, but for the most part, things don't rattle me too much. So you asked the question, where does it come from? That could, that's probably as good of an origin story as I have. My mom and dad, very devout Catholics, still go to church. I went to a Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, um, and then graduate school. Boston College turns out to be Catholic as well, where
Yep.
I got my master's degree. So, Jesuit school. So I have a lot of Catholic training. But now I tend more towards silent retreat, meditation, Buddhism, and spiritual practices.
Mm-hmm.
Though I still have a very active prayer life personally, still believe in God, and Jesus Christ, it's still my core. But I would also consider myself probably a closet Buddhist. And the reason that is and this is only just my experience, right? It's not for everyone, but this is my experience. I think it's really easy for me as a Christian and for other Christians I've noticed just to lean on God and Scripture, but not develop their own spiritual gifts other than trying to trust in God, trust in God, trust in God, trust in God. And one thing that I've really appreciated about the Buddhists is they don't have a hand to hold. And they've had to work really hard at being able to forgive, to love, to meditate, to be present in emotional and difficult situations, etc. And to me, the way I interpret it, is they have to spend a lot of time developing the gifts that God has given them so that they can be as loving and as compassionate and as wise as possible on the planet. Christians aren't asked or challenged that much to do that. They're asked
No.
to do it, but they're not given the tools like Buddhists are of meditate and all the different. They're not given that kind of push. And so, to me, from my perspective, doing both is the most responsible path that I can take, and hence, that's where I'm at. Raised Catholic, very Christian, but practicing Buddhist tools and meditation and different things like that.
Yeah, I'm in the same kind of boat. I was raised a Lutheran as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
highly active in the church before going to college. Strong faith in God, but I totally agree with you that the spiritual gifts, tools, skills, if you will, are just
Mm-hmm.
not taught a whole lot in Western religion.
Right.
And that's where a lot of my journey has been for myself in the last 10, 15 years, was more of that path as opposed to spending a lot of time in the Bible. I mean, I still go to church every Sunday because
Mm-hmm.
I bring my gifts of music
Mm-hmm.
to the service. But um, I find that I kind of swim, if you will, through life much easier, much calmer, and so forth because of developing those
Mm-hmm.
skills and
Mm-hmm.
having to find other resources than religion, Christian
Mm-hmm.
religion, to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my experience of growing up and of being and of seeing from the outside other Christian faiths, the emphasis is around know the Bible, read the Bible,
Memorize
memorize
the
the Bible,
Bible.
or memorize Bible if you can, follow Jesus, believe in Jesus,
Hmm.
believe He's the Lord and Savior, love, forgive, follow the Ten Commandments. Right now, if I were to come and say to someone, "Look, I'm having trouble forgiving someone. How do I do that? How do I forgive?" The answer from a lot of people would be trust in God, pray more, read the
Hmm.
Bible.
Hmm.
Right? Those would be some of the top answers. I'd be like, "Well, I'm doing that, but I'm stuck."
Yeah, instead of bringing in the emotional intelligence
Right.
kind of skills.
The Buddhists help you with my kind of stuck.
Hmm.
And that's what I found has been the most work for me and where I've tried to spend a lot of time so I don't get stuck and I can keep growing. To try to be a more loving, wiser, compassionate person. So,
Yeah, somebody who's been a corporate leader, has gone through two marriages, and so forth. I found that the spiritual work is what's brought me the most peace,
hmm
given all the challenges that I have faced in life.
right, right.
And I don't think it's. I
Now,
think we as a nation are kind of putting everybody's hand behind the back per se, because we don't really teach those skills. They're not taught in the
hmm
public school system. They're not really taught in churches, that we have to kind of meander our way through life and find those resources for us on our own
right.
individually.
Yeah, now there are a lot of school systems that are starting to train different students on mindfulness techniques, emotional intelligence techniques, spending more time doing that,
Mm-hmm.
which I applaud. I think it's really helpful. And the younger people can learn and practice, and it becomes part of their DNA and their fiber, the better off the world will be. And I will say, I do think this generation coming up is one of the most inclusive generations ever. And I give them a lot of credit for that. Um, I think they see, I think they have less bias and less prejudice. They have more care and concern for the planet. Um, and they're much more inclusive overall,
Mm-hmm.
has been what I've noticed. And I think it's good for the world. It can't happen soon enough.
Yeah, I would have totally agree with you. I have a lot of hope and faith, if you will, in the younger generations coming up.
hmm hmm
Whether you look at it from a spirituality standpoint or a energy standpoint, whether you dive into yin and yang, masculine, feminine, whatever it may be, with the push of technology and AI and so forth, the logical side of life is going to get automated, if you will,
hmm
that future generations are going to have to rely more on the more emotional side, what people would say is the more feminine energy side, the creative
Mm.
side, and so forth, moving forward, because the logic side is going to keep getting automated more and more and more, because that's what technology addresses.
Mm. hmm
And so, because of that, I think spirituality, which is akin to the creative side, the love side of
hmm
life, is become more and more relevant and more important in people's lives.
Right. Well, and if it's okay with you, let me make the jump to the leadership programs and the leadership work we do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I was going to head next anyway.
Okay. So when I do leadership programs, I never mention spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. It's just don't have to. Because all of the research now is catching up. If someone wants to be a really effective leader, it's best for them not to get emotionally triggered too often.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a much more resourceful spot to stay curious, to stay open, to listen, to ask questions. You have more opportunity and choices in front of you if
Just
you're calm.
to stay neutral.
Stay neutral, right? It's not disengaged.
Mm-mm.
A lot of people think it means disengagement. You're actually more engaged because what you've done is you've taught yourself to be more open to more data and more possibilities and opportunities. So you literally can be more resourceful if you're more calm. And you're actually more engaged with more of the environment because of it. Now, if I can teach people to run meetings that are more candid and more open and help leaders be calmer and more engaged and teach systems to ask better questions
Mm-hmm.
and to be better observers to see what's working, what's not working, so that they can serve the world, their customers, their patients, their clients better, What's interesting is that's the formula for financial success. And if they can do that from a more and more curious spot in a service spot, they can also do it with less stress. Now, what capitalistic company doesn't want to serve their customer, client, or patient better with less stress? None.
None.
There's none. And so, without even talking about spirituality at all, it's possible to use all of these practices from a science perspective with science tools and methods to help individuals, leaders, teams, and systems be better.
Well, just like you said, the research is starting to come to bear, right? So science is starting to
Totally.
meet spirituality and is starting to blend, if you will, that you can't get divisive with it like you used to in the past.
Yeah, it right depends on your perspective and your opinion. Some opinions can become very divisive, but it depends on your perspective. But let me give you an example. So at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the vaccine makers came to me and said, "Look, we want to train our 50,000 people to bring hope to the world while we deliver the vaccine. We're asking several companies, can you give us a proposal to help us do this?" I think they invited 8 companies. So we put together a proposal. And I could tell you, Andy, it was one of the 2 best months of my life. It was so much fun calling all the people I'd worked with or knew, authors, coaches, trainers, facilitators, founders, thought leaders, and say, "Look, here's the project. Do you want in?" And everybody said yes. Everyone I called said yes. And I made a deal with everyone. I said, "Look, whatever IP you put into this program, this project, you'll get paid for phase 1, you'll get paid for phase 2, but on phase 3, we're going to give it all away to college students so that we can really bring hope to the whole world." And everyone was like, yeah. So I put it together in 3 phases. Phase 1 was training the 50,000. Phase 2 was training the 50,000 plus all their vendors and suppliers so they could build an ecosystem of hope. And then phase 3 was training college students all around the world so they could bring hope. Well, lo and behold, when it came time to decide which proposal to pick, we got to the final cut. It was us and Accenture. And the company said, "Your proposal excites us the most, but it's too big for us. We can't handle it. We just want to focus on our 50,000. So we're going to give the contract to Accenture, not you. But thank you, because that was super exciting." I was like, okay, right? So when I went back to the group, I thought the group was going to dissolve because we didn't get it. When I went back to the group, because we had met several times to put this whole proposal together, the group said, "No, we can't stop. This is too much fun. Let's keep going." And so we had to keep going, and it was called Hope Makers. And so that was the whole impetus of Hope Makers and how Hope Makers came about. And now I have another group where we're training people to do coaching, facilitating, etc., using all the tools I talked about earlier, for them to begin and create community in other parts of the world. And so long and short of it is, I now have Westwood International and all the work we do. And then I have this leadership roundtable where different leaders come together to share different questions on people stuff. But now I've started this organic group called Hope Makers of people around the world, thought makers and leaders, who can go out and begin to build their own communities, their own methodologies, their own practices based on these principles to go out and create more hope in the world from their own perspective. And so I kind of get a kick out of it a little bit, because out of this quote unquote failure has come this whole group called Hope Makers which is now taking all of this work to a whole nother level. Matter of fact, we have another meeting coming up. We usually meet twice a year face to face, and then we do some online meetings, and it's been really exciting. So
So
that's what I'm up to. Yeah.
the basis of the program is a why of hope, and how I'd have to imagine the people that get trained up on these things are going out into the world where wherever they're going in the world is facing different challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that you as a facilitator are going to take your skills and kind of match up whatever their challenges are with solutions that we're going to facilitate that's then going to bring hope to the lives of the people that are in that community. Did I get that
Yeah.
right?
I mean, kind of. Our tagline is we're a community of community builders.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lady who started a yoga program for children on TV in a TV show. So she comes and we learn and we support her, and she goes out and she helps children practice yoga and be more mindful. We have another lady who's worked with the UN on multiple projects. She's creating something called the International House of Hope. We support her and do that. We have several people who are coaches to executives and trainers and facilitators who go work with large companies. Like I'm working with 3 different large global medical companies right now using these principles so they can go out and develop better products, help the planet be healthier, etc. I'm creating communities of hope from that perspective. So everyone who comes to Hope Makers comes from a particular perspective, and the goal is for them to go out, whether it's just their family or their neighborhood, or a company or a nonprofit or a program, to go out and create more hope in the world. Does that help, Andy?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
I just wanted our audience to understand when you say the word hope that
Mm-hmm.
just like value, hope comes in different sizes, shapes, colors, and so forth, and that one size does not fit all
No.
per se. So
And we have a very
there's some work you have to do to figure out where the niche is, or where the pathway is, if you
exactly,
will, to make that happen.
exactly. And we have a very practical approach to hope. We have an action-based hope. As a matter of fact, the 5 values of Hope Makers are: first, we listen. Second, we appreciate what's working. We just observe and notice what's working. Third, we take a perspective of serving. Fourth, we think big and think big together. And then fifth, we take action. We call it MGSH, make good stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Those are our 5 values. So for us, hope is practicing those 5 values. It's very practical. And if we can help people be better listeners, appreciate what's working,
Mm-hmm.
find ways to serve something bigger than themselves, think big together and with others, and then go out and do stuff, test it, prototype it, try it, keep changing it until you find what really works to make something better in the world, that's hope. It's hope of the best kind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to imagine in a lot of respects. I mean, I ran into this experience at Boeing where I had different players in the ecosystem that were not playing well together,
Mm,
and things are not getting done. And a lot of it
right.
was because they didn't understand each other. They didn't understand what were the main drivers
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
each of the
Exactly.
parties, right? So it took some facilitation to say, where's our common enemy, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
Where do we line up?
Mm,
And we lined up we all could agree on the kind of aviation system we wanted. In this case, we were
mm-hmm.
working in Denver.
Mm,
And it was taking time for people listening to the other's perspective as to what was important to them in the qualities of this future system that we're looking for. And when you start
mm-hmm.
talking with each other, understanding that, quote, common enemy that you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to work on, then the magic happened and developed a program that they can then go use in other cities
Yeah.
around the U.S. So we brought hope. We brought hope to the situation by using some of the principles you just
Right.
laid out.
Right. Exactly. And so let's let's come back full circle. And if we talk full circle, like even if you take the values of listen, appreciate, serve, think big, make stuff happen, right? The values of hope makers. There's almost no company in the world that wouldn't want more of that too. People listening to
Absolutely.
each other,
Absolutely.
right? People listening to each other more, developing really keen observational skills about what's working, what do clients like, what do patients like, what helps people be more motivated, more engaged, more, right?
Hmm.
Serving each other, thinking big. Every company wants more innovation and bigger thinking, and then make it happen, right? So, what we're doing is extremely practical and has been proven to work for centuries, even though it's difficult to do. And it's why someone like myself or Westwood International often get hired, help us do it. Because there's just so many skills and challenges to it that it takes extra input. If you want to be an elite athlete, you need a coach.
Hmm.
And if these teams want to be elite teams to get more done, be more in service to their clients in the world, and do it with less stress, they need a coach. And in a lot of ways, it's what we do. And I think it's a lot of ways why Hope Makers keeps getting bigger and better, because people are attracted to being a part of that growing and learning curve. You know?
Once again, it's not really, going back to our conversation with spirituality, it's not really skills that are taught a whole lot.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
in the school, university system, or whatever, and not even necessarily at home.
Right.
At the younger ages, to be able to understand where those roadblocks are, whether it be ego or other things that stop people from having those skills, talents, behaviors when you get into a room, to be neutral, to be present, to be curious, to try to understand, listen to understand first, as opposed to listening to responding as your mandate when you're listening. All those
Yeah.
type skills that can really help you to really jump to the next level in terms of
Right.
capability, creativity, productivity, success,
Exactly.
and so forth.
Exactly. Exactly. So, kind of in a nutshell, that's it, Andy.
So tell me about your other initiative, 1.716. What is that all about?
Well, it's an overlap with Hope Makers, because now people are starting to come to me and saying, look, can you teach me how to work with corporations, with large businesses and large teams? What are the services you offer, the techniques you use, the methods you bring? And so I went back to the beginning of that first proposal that I told you about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that research says if you can get anywhere from 16 to 22% of a population practicing a new habit or a new insight or whatever it might be, belief, that's the tipping point for the rest of the organization or the population. And so when I looked at the global population, I noticed that 1.716 was in that range. And I thought, all right, my goal is to help 1.716 billion people practice these values.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the irony is one of my clients has 1 billion people a day use their product. So I'm halfway there. But I've got more to go. All right. Now, so what I'm working on then, 1.716, is kind of a master training or a master community of people to come in and begin to learn these techniques, these ideas, these services, so that they can go out and work with companies, large organizations, groups to make the kind of difference that other people in Hope Makers are making.
Mm-hmm.
And so 1.716 is that first kind of 6 to 12 months of master training, and that people like it and enjoy it. They can move into Hope Makers and be a part of the global community that's going to continue on supporting each other. So that's that. Actually, that 1.716 program is right now being developed and will be rolled out in the next 2 to 3 months. So we're really excited about that. And we have some very like high-end quality people who are going to be part of the faculty, i.e. the person who helped Simon Sinek find his why. We have one of the top children educators in the world who are going to be a part of it. We had someone who successfully ran a presidential campaign who's going to be a part of the faculty. Multiple New York Times bestselling authors and leaders. We have one of the top mental health experts in all of North America in the workplace who's going to be a part of it. So we brought some really senior, exciting people in, but who also have the Hope Maker spirit, where it's very personal, very accessible, dialogue, questions, etc. So we're excited about it. It's going to be an extension of Hope Makers, and we'll be rolling it out here shortly.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Greg, for taking time out of your busy day to come spend some time with the Generate Your Value community and talk about where science is now starting to meet spirituality and how that can be a game changer in the business world. If somebody wanted to engage further with you on your initiatives or wants to know more about Upper Wisconsin or anything of that nature, what is the best way they could reach out to you to get some engagement?
Yeah, there's a few. The easiest way is LinkedIn. I'm the only Greg Zlevor on the whole planet. So if you find my name on LinkedIn, it's me. So feel free to connect there. Second, if you're interested in Hope Makers, it's hopemakerscollective.com, all one word, HOPEMAKERS, collective.com. And then Westwood International can be found on our website, westwoodintl.com. So those are the best places to find us. And anyone who's interested or is kind of attracted to this kind of spirit and way of doing things, more than happy to have a conversation and see if there's a fit.
Yeah, so we have one more question for you. It's the same question we ask all of our guests.
Sure.
We like to see where the thread is amongst all the answers after, we're starting season 4 now. So we've had multiple seasons where we've asked this question. But the question is, Greg, what does the words generate your value mean to you?
Well, my definition of true power is my personal energy and efforts moving towards what matters without static or interference. So, to me, to generate real value with this package would be to eliminate as much interference and static as possible so I can just cleanly move towards what really matters.
So I appreciate your answer, and for the listening audience, can't thank you enough for taking that valuable resource that we all have that's limited. It's called time here on this Earth School, to sit and listen to this episode, gain the wisdom. Greg, we call them golden nuggets on this podcast, the golden nuggets that came out of Greg and I's conversation that you can take and integrate into your life, into your leadership, into your business, into your hobby, whatever it may be, that helps you grow and find a life filled every day with joy, happiness, and success, for however you define success for yourself. So once again, can't thank you enough for joining in on this episode. We're here every week with another great guest just like Greg. So we'll hope you tune in, subscribe to the podcast, and we wish you the best today for the rest of your week. And we'll see you next time right here on the Generate Your Value podcast. Take care.
Great. Andy, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Generate Your Value podcast. If you find our conversations to be useful in your life, I invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode.
You can find me online at Instagram at _Zach.Levy, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
For information on my coaching services, visit my website at www.generateyourvalue.com. You can also find me and my company on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Simply search for Generate Your Value on those platforms.
Once again, thanks for joining us for today's podcast, and we invite you to generate your value in this world.